This is Milena Skembry's internship video. I'm going to start off by giving a background of where I did my internship. For my placement, I went to Appleby College to work with Teresa Blake in her Positive Education program. To give you some context, this program employs a strength-based approach to mental health and well-being. The framework of positive education is based on the principles of positive psychology. Essentially, the model of positive psychology is based on 6 pillars or levers, which state that in order to be well, one must develop in all 6, not necessarily all at the same time, but be active in each. So these include positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning and purpose, achievement, and health and vitality, also known as the PERMA model. So positive education is the embedding of these concepts and tools into the educational context. So some aspects of the program include positive teaching practices, embedding character strengths, managing teachers' stress, exploring mindfulness, healthy eating habits, and positive sport. Since there are so many aspects that can contribute to the well-being of students, I thought it would be beneficial to focus on one area where I could do research and gather useful skills. So this area of focus that interested me was the concept of mindfulness. I'm going to go on to my theoretical framework. So the theoretical framework that helped me in my internship is the framework from the Ontario Social Studies, History, and Geography curriculum document. This model helped me organize my observations to answer my inquiry questions. So as I go through my experiences at my internship, I will refer back to this framework and explain what stage I was in and how it helped guide me. So my research question, I particularly wanted to know how the students were perceiving the effectiveness of the program. Creating this question would be the first stage of my theoretical framework. So the question that guided my learning was, how do students believe the mindfulness practices implemented through the positive education program affect their mental health and well-being? So my learning goal was that I am learning to understand students' perception of how the implementation of mindfulness practices through the positive education program support their mental health and well-being. And then my success criteria was I will know I'm successful when I have made observation notes of various mindfulness practices, when I understand how to implement and promote mindfulness practices within a classroom as well as promote it school-wide, when I conduct a survey to assess how mindfulness practices affect students' mental health, when I have participated productively at my Appleby College internship placement, and when I have completed 20 hours at my internship. So my rationale behind my area of focus was to ultimately acquire skills to help my students flourish and to see if the mindfulness practices at Appleby were an effective step to achieve this goal in the eyes of the student. I want to be able to provide my students with the tools to prevent mental health issues from arising or to help them cope with any struggles they may be going through at a given time. So now I'm going to review some of the literature from my annotated bibliography which helps support my research question. This took me to the second stage of my inquiry model, which was to gather and organize information. So reviewing relevant literature related to my research question and learning goals helped me gather this information about mindfulness practices as well as the positive education program itself. So in Hall's study, he looked at students' perception of well-being. One of the findings explained that in 15 classrooms where students' well-being scored lowest, the risk of later deviant behavior and dropping out seemed significant at a group level. So this makes the study relevant to my learning goal because it's evident that student well-being is crucial, and learning how to better the well-being of my students can not only help them in the present, but in their future as well. Then in Jessie Sun's study, she focused on the analysis of the implementation of positive education at Geelong Grammar School in Australia. So there were students from grades 7 to 12 that took part in an individual flourishing questionnaire, measuring PERMA, resilience, optimism, vitality, confidence, and calmness. So the article relates to my learning goal as it focuses on positive education as a whole. So it was essential for me to understand the other aspects of the program as well as see how all these areas were interconnected to mindfulness, which is what I was focusing on. So the whole approach focuses on developing the whole student which helps their social, emotional, moral, and intellectual facets. Then the last study examines the effects of mindfulness practices on elementary school children. So the findings show a significant increase in children's attention and specifically reducing impulsivity. So this could help me think of what questions to focus on in the future. So in my internship placement, I was purely focusing on the students' perception of how I can bring these into my classroom, but focusing on the effects such as attention and reducing impulsivity could be where future research of mine may lead. So for my experience at Appleby with Teresa was wonderful. She gave me a tour of the whole campus, which was beautiful. And the image on the right is the positive education room, where we had meetings and discussed things that I observed throughout the day or previous days. So to begin, what helped me gather and organize all this information was making observation notes, which was also one of my success criteria. So making observation notes on what I was seeing and hearing allowed me not only to gather and organize, but it also moved me to the third stage of the theoretical model, which was to analyze and interpret, as well as the fourth stage, which was to evaluate and draw conclusions. So in my observation notes, I pulled out some various mindfulness practices I observed as well as participated in. So the first was a yoga class. It was a deep flow class for grade 11 girls. I was able to participate in it, and it made me feel relaxed and gave me time to clear my head of anything I was stressed or worried about. I also heard a student say, "I love this part of our day, I feel so relaxed." So I moved to the analyzing stage here, as this helped me answer my research question, as it seemed like this practice was benefiting the student's well-being. I could also analyze that the student's comment by saying it seemed like she was enjoying this practice. As well as I got to go to a grade 10 math class before one of their big tests that day. So the teacher spent about 3 minutes before their test to do a quick mindfulness breathing exercise. The students were guided to pay attention to each inhalation and exhalation with an aid in counting each breath, and they were told to relax their body, clear their minds, and believe in themselves. So this helps also achieve my learning goal, as I can see how to actually bring it into my own classroom. And then I could analyze this practice, as I could see it was a quick and easy thing to do, yet very effective, as the whole room felt calm and relaxed. I also asked a student after the test if the breathing exercise was beneficial. She said it was new this year and she really enjoyed it. It helped her clear her head and helped her calm down. This also helps me look at my research question and start to draw conclusions, as I could see that these practices were benefiting students. I also went to another class called a bar class, which focused on being mindful of what their body was feeling. So it was focusing on feeling their toes pushing in the ground, as well as being mindful of their hands gripping on their bar. This was also another student's favorite part of their day, so they were enjoying this practice as well. In a nutrition class, I got to observe a mindful eating talk, which helps students think about being present and develop a new mindset around food. The goal is to shift the focus from externally thinking about food to exploring and enjoying the eating experience. They were taught to appreciate their food and take small bites, chewing thoroughly, eating slowly, and removing distractions. And then lastly, I got to look at a mindful meditation program, which was also done in a yoga class. The students were told to put aside all thoughts and focus on the present. They were told to become aware of their breath, attuning to the sensation of the air moving in and out of their body. They were to feel their belly rise and fall in the air as the air enters their nostrils and leaves out through their mouths. And to also watch every thought come and go, and when thoughts come up, to not ignore them, but to note them and remain calm. And if their mind did wander, to observe it and then return their thought to their breathing. And then when they were done, to gradually get up slowly. So on day 3 of my internship, I achieved one of my success criteria by conducting the survey to assess how mindfulness practices affected students' mental health. And this was also moving to my inquiry model of the evaluating and drawing conclusion section. So I handed out these wellness surveys to 5 different classes, one from each grade, from grades 8 to 12, which was around 100 students. So the survey addressed fatigue, sleep quality, mood, stress level, and muscle soreness. And this is where I would be getting the core of my information to draw conclusions, which was the stage 4 of the model. So when Teresa and I were reviewing the student survey, we found that we were left with some reassuring results, and the averages were as follows. So the fatigue average was normal, the sleep quality was averaged as good, the muscle average was feeling good, the stress level was averaged as stressed/normal, and the mood average was generally good. So now for my discussion, I'm going to talk about my findings. So this brings me to stage 5 of my theoretical model, which is communicating my findings. So my observations coupled with the student surveys showed that the student well-being at Appleby is overall positive from the student's perspective. I can also draw conclusions that these mindfulness practices set in place are having positive effects on student mental health and well-being. I am aware that these practices cannot cure mental health illnesses, and they may have positive effects. They may be having positive mental health effects from other outside factors, but these practices I observed and participated in can definitely be used as coping mechanisms for students. Not only do the surveys give me this information, but my interaction with students do as well. Participating in this internship helped me complete my success criteria, as I feel confident to bring these practices into my own teaching practice. I know how important student mental health is, therefore I am happy I have some tools to alleviate any stress they may be feeling. I want my students to be successful and flourish, and their mental health and well-being definitely is a factor and needs to be cared for. My theoretical model is a circular model, therefore it brings me back to the question stage at the end of communicating my findings. So like I mentioned before, I could go on from here by formulating more questions based on the benefits of mindfulness practices, such as increased productivity. Also, I was only observing and analyzing for a short period of time at Appleby, so it would be interesting to look at the differences between each grade in more depth. So, for example, do grade 8s have an overall positive sense of well-being that differs from grade 12s, and why might that be? So that is all for my internship placement video. Thank you for watching.